Week 7 of the fantasy football season, and here's the top 36 running backs. I'm ranking this week number 1, Austin Ekeler of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Austin Ekeler, we know he came back in last week's game, and the Dallas Cowboys definitely shut him down in the run game. But this week here, I think they can open up the playbook a little more for Austin Ekeler after coming off the high ankle sprain. We know he's one of the best wide receivers out of the backfield in the league, catching the football. And this week in a potential shootout at the Kansas City Chiefs, a game the Los Angeles Chargers definitely need. I think they rely heavily on Austin Ekeler in this one. And I got him at 1. Number 2, Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. So McCaffrey, we know, left the game with the oblique injury and a rib injury as well. So he's been banged up, McCaffrey. He's got a monster workload. But for some reason here on Monday Night Football, I believe Christian McCaffrey's going to play in this ball game because they're saying there hopefully could play is Kyle Shanahan and this 49er team. So if he plays, it's a great matchup in Minnesota. They got one of the worst defenses in the league. Even at 100%, I still think McCaffrey puts up big numbers if he plays. And he's number 2. Number 3, Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks. So this week, I know the rankings are all over the place with injuries, bye weeks, and stuff like that. But Kenneth Walker, a nice matchup here versus the Arizona Cardinals. And Kenneth Walker, he's a top 10 running back so far this season here for fantasy owners in the Seattle Seahawks team. A lot of people thought Zach Charbonnet was going to eat into Walker's workload, but obviously that hasn't been the case. So right now with a good matchup versus Arizona, and he's a home run hitting type of running back here is Walker. I got him at 3. Number 4, Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins. So Raheem in the league by storm this season, and we know he's a good running back. We've seen it with the 49ers, but obviously injuries have been a huge problem for Mostert. But right now leads the league in touchdowns. He's putting up monster fantasy points as Mostert. And I know it's a tough matchup Philly, but he's matchup proof. He fits this offense with Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins like a glove. And once again, I believe he'll score a big game for fantasy owners. Number 5, Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants. So Saquon Barkley, it took him a little bit last week to get going versus a tough Bill run defense. And then in the third, fourth quarter, he was rumbling for some big gains. So this week here, a good matchup with the Commanders coming to town. A team, obviously, Saquon Barkley and this Giant team very familiar with. So Barkley, he looked 100% in that game coming off the ankle sprain after missing 3 weeks. And this week here versus the Washington Commanders, I think he has a good one. And I got him at 5. Number 6, Travis Etienne, Jacksonville Jaguars. So Etienne, he's been a top running back this season for fantasy owners. And he just has a knack for the end zone, is Travis Etienne. We've seen it over the last few weeks. We know this passing game hasn't been all that great with Trevor Lawrence. And now with Lawrence, even if he plays in this game, which it looks like he will at the New Orleans Saints, he's obviously not 100%. And an indoor game, faster track, I think they rely on the run as Jacksonville. And I got him at 6. Number 7, staying in the same game, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. Alvin Kamara, we know he missed the first few weeks of the season with suspension, but ever since coming back, Kamara, he's been a solid running back, catching a lot of passes out of the backfield, obviously getting a huge workload. And Jamal Williams possibly might return in this game, but I think it don't matter. Maybe for short yardage and touchdowns, he'll steal from Kamara, but Kamara is still going to get his 20-25 touches per game, and he's one of the best receiving backs out of the backfield. So this week here in a matchup versus a middle-of-the-pack Jacksonville defense, Thursday Night Football, scoring's pretty high usually. I got him at 7. Number 8, Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. So Bijan Robinson, it's been a solid rookie season for him, no doubt about it. But to be honest, I expected a little bit more out of Bijan Robinson. We just haven't seen that monster 35 point fantasy day. And this week here, he versus a stout defense at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And the problem with Bijan not having these huge games is his quarterback, Desmond Ridder, one of the worst starters in the league. Really spread the field. And if they had a quarterback, even Heineke, I think, could come in and spread the field here for this Falcon team. But they're sticking with Desmond Ridder. And Bijan Robinson the last 2 weeks, only 11-point game and a 13-point PPR day. But this week here, Tampa Bay, he's still getting a huge workload. The upside is limitless here for Bijan Robinson. And I got him at 8. Number 9, DeAndre Swift of the Philadelphia Eagles. So DeAndre Swift, he's been a solidifier in the backfield for Philadelphia this season after they traded a third-round pick only to get him on draft day in the NFL draft. So DeAndre Swift, he's had big games. Early in the season, Kenneth Gainwell, he was the favorite over there and getting touches until Swift in that Week 2 game went off for 175 yards and a touchdown. And he never looked back. So this week here in a monster shootout game, potentially here with the Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles, I think DeAndre Swift has a good ball game once again. And he's number 9. Number 10, Josh Jacobs of the Vegas Raiders. So Josh Jacobs, so far this season, he really hasn't done anything in terms of putting up a monster game. He's had some decent performances, but he's really putting up number 2 running back numbers in the early going. Here's Jacobs. Speaking of good matchup on paper at the Chicago Bears that can't stop anyone, and Brian Hoyer, Wade and O'Donnell over there at quarterback. They're going to check it down a lot to Josh Jacobs. They're going to rely on the run a lot. We saw last week he had 25 carries, is Jacobs. So this week here with a huge workload and a backup quarterback in there, they're going to rely on Jacobs, and he's going to, just on volume alone, play himself into possibly top 10 numbers. Number 11, Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Pacheco, the last few weeks here, he's really getting it going in the backfield here. And Kansas City finally has a running back after the last few seasons trying to find that bell cow, and a guy could take pressure off Patrick Mahomes in this passing game a little bit, even though it's not like Mahomes can't go out there and throw 50 times a game. Pacheco's been running the football well. He's got that knack for the end zone, and he's just running guys over right now. So this week here in a good matchup versus the Chargers, that don't stop anyone, even though they held Tony Pollard down on the ground last week. I think Pacheco once again has a good ball game, and I got him at 11. Number 12, Brian Robinson of the Washington Commanders. So Brian Robinson, he's been solid, and he's taken that backfield by storm over there in Washington the last month of the season. So right now, pretty much every week, it's a touchdown for Robinson. If you're in short yardage distance, you know he's getting the football, and then most likely he's going to run a couple guys over and find the end zone. And this week here, in a good matchup, the weak New York Giant defense, I think Brian Robinson's going to have his way once again. He gets anywhere from 12 to 16 fantasy points finding the end zone. Number 13, Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Jones, we'll see if he comes back in this game for sure. But with that bye week and extra rest, missing the last 3 out of 4 weeks here, is Aaron Jones. I think that hamstring's almost 100%. This Green Bay Packer team, they got to get back on track after losing the last 2 games to the Lions in Week 4, and then the Raiders on Monday Night Football in Week 5. And right now, the Denver Broncos, they're a defense that really don't stop anyone. And Aaron Jones, he's one of the better receiving backs out of the backfield as well. So this week here, back in action. Packers offense obviously misses him, and hopefully he plays. If he does, he's number 13. Number 14, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. So Ramondre Stevenson, last week it was good to see him find the end zone, and it was good to see the Patriots actually in a game where some of their players could have some fantasy value. But anyway, it's a tough matchup, no doubt about it, versus the Buffalo Bills. But Stevenson, another running back who catches a lot of passes out of the backfield. So in a game where they're going to be trailing early and often and have to throw the football, at least Stevenson, we know, is going to get some touches in catching the football in PPR leagues. And like I said, running back's been a very weak position and a lot of injuries, and with 6 teams on bye, just on volume alone as well, I think Stevenson cracks. Number 14, number 15, James Cook. We're staying in the same game of the Buffalo Bills. So James Cook, he's been a solid running back so far this season for this Buffalo Bill team. And I know the workload has been up and down a little bit over the last few weeks, but now with Damian Harris most likely out a while after the scary injury last week, it's pretty much Cook and Latavius Murray. And there's rumors that Leonard Fournette might be brought in for a short yardage guy. But anyway, with a good matchup in New England and Cook a solid running back, I got him at 15, 16, Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. Jerome Ford, he's actually played pretty well in terms of fantasy football since Nick Chubb went out with injury versus the Steelers a few weeks ago. So right now, mediocre matchup at the Indianapolis Colts with a fast track indoors. Ford could catch the football out of the backfield, but I'm seeing it going towards a 50-50 split with him and Kareem Hunt. But I think Ford has more upside and a little bit better of a receiver out of the backfield. So I got him in 16, staying in the same game. 17, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. I know Jonathan Taylor, the first 2 weeks, Zach Moss has outplayed him big time, and obviously Zach Moss has got more touches, and Taylor still has to get in shape more, has to get his legs on the run. But I think this week they ramp up the touches again here for Jonathan Taylor, and this is going to be a grinded out type of ball game with the Cleveland Browns and the Indianapolis Colts, especially with Gardner Minshew going to start possibly for the remainder of the season. This Colt team, they're going to try to solidify the run early and often, and I think Taylor this week, he gets 15 to 20 touch range, and I got him at 17. Number 18, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. So David Montgomery, he's going to miss a few weeks here, and Jahmyr Gibbs, he's already missed 2 weeks with a hamstring injury, but this Detroit Lion team, next man up, it's going to be the time for him hopefully to break out and take the role over there in the backfield, because we know the talent. We know he could be one of the best receiving backs out of the backfield. And we've seen it so far this season that he could catch a lot of passes and he can make plays. It's just if he could get to that second level and show the burst he did in college this week here. Not the greatest of matchups at Baltimore, but another guy who should get decent volume in this one if Gibbs plays. I got him at 18. Number 19, Zach Moss of the Indianapolis Colts. So Zach Mois, he's not going to go away right away here in this backfield for this Indianapolis Colts team. But as the weeks go on, I think Taylor's going to get more touches, obviously, with his legs on the room. And they're not going to pay a guy $42 million for 3 years to be in a 50-50 timeshare. So right now, while Moore still has some value and he's playing great football the last 2 weeks, no doubt about it. But this week in a tougher matchup versus a solid Brown defense, I got him at 19, number 20, Alexander Madison of the Minnesota Vikings. I know Madison, the touches have gone up, but Cam Akers is there as well. And this week, it's going to be a very tough matchup on Monday Night Football versus one of the best defenses, if not the best defenses in the league, versus the 49ers. So yes, he's going to get volume, but I did say to sit Madison this week. But like I said, running back's been a bad position this season. And with 6 teams on bye, just on volume, he'll probably crack the top 20. But I'm not expecting much. 21, Javonte Williams, the Denver Broncos. So Williams, he came back sooner than I thought last week. Only missing 1 week with the hip injury and flexor. But right now, he came back last week, 10 carries, 52 yards. Not bad, but it was just a tough game and a tough script versus the Kansas City Chiefs. But this week here, in a game versus the Green Bay Packers, where I expect it to be closer than people think, with the Broncos and the Packers coming to town, I think Javonte Williams, he's going to be in between the tackles. Samaje Perine, we know he's banged up. We don't know if he's going to play with the ankle. And Jaleel McLaughlin, he's more of a receiving and a third down back for this Bronco team, even though the Broncos could get down early and often once again. But anyway, I think Williams could carve out a decent ball game. And if he could get 60 total yards and a touchdown, I think that's solid as a number 2 back. Number 22, Zach Evans of the Los Angeles Rams. So Kyren Williams, he's going to be out multiple weeks now with a high ankle sprain. And it's just another running back going down with a bad injury here. And it might be a committee with Evans, Freeman, and Gaskin, but right now Zach Evans knows the playbook. He's a bigger back that Sean McVay actually liked here for this Los Angeles Ram team. And now this Ram team, they've gone through a few running backs this season. Traded Akers away to Minnesota. Ronnie Rivers hurt and Williams hurt. And now Evans next man up. So this week here, in the middle of a packed matchup, even though I think he's going to get a decent workload versus Pittsburgh. I got him 22, 23, Jaleel McLaughlin of the Denver Broncos. So like I said, McLaughlin, he's solidified his role as a third down back and passing downs back here. And he's an explosive guy. I know he's a smaller type of player, but he's like a Darren Sproles in my opinion, where he's tough to tackle. He hides behind those offensive linemen, and once he's in the open field, he could burst and has home run ability. So right now, this week here in a matchup versus Green Bay in a grinded out type of game, I think McLaughlin's a low-end 2-back flex option at 23, 24, Jaylen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I've been saying it for weeks that Jaylen Warren most likely could be taking over this starting job here in Pittsburgh. And already off the bat, he's more explosive than Najee Harris. He's a better receiver out of the backfield than Najee Harris. And this week could be a game in Los Angeles versus the Rams where they're trailing early on and they're going to have to throw the football a little bit, where that's where Warren really comes into play. So this week here, if you got to put Warren as your number 2 running back, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Like I said, he's taking touches from Harris, and he's a better PPR option to begin with. Number 25, Roschon Johnson of the Chicago Bears. So Johnson, last week he didn't play with a concussion, but this week I expect him back in the lineup. And this is going to be an ugly game with 2 teams using backup quarterbacks, enticing Beckett for the Chicago Bear team, and even O'Donnell and Hoyer it's going to be for this Las Vegas Raider team. But anyway, Roschon Johnson, we know he's an explosive back, could catch the ball out of the backfield, but I still believe that Foreman and him are going to be in a 50-50 timeshare in this game. But with his catching ability and the home run ability over Foreman, I'll put him at 25, 26, Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I had some decent hopes here for Rachaad White coming into the season as a nice number 2 running back in PPR leagues, but so far this season he's only had 1 pop game and the rest pretty much non-existent. And we even saw Keyshawn Vaughn last week work into the workload a little bit, getting 6 touches in that game. So right now Tampa Bay trying to figure it out at running back, but Rachaad White's still the starter for now. And this week here, it is a tough matchup versus the Falcons, but with his catching ability, I think he could put in mediocre numbers. At best, maybe 8-10 fantasy points. 27, Kareem Hunt. Cleveland Browns said Kareem Hunt last week was his best game in a while. Even last season, Hunt really didn't do much, where he was in a timeshare with Nick Chubb getting 30% of the touches. So right now, I think this is coming closer to a 50-50 split with him and Jerome Ford. But I still think Ford's the better back. But Kareem Hunt, obviously the veteran and more an in-between the tackles type of runner than a Jerome Ford. So this week here in a grinded-out ball game in Indianapolis, I think Hunt could be a decent option at 27, 28. Keon Ingram of the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of people that ran out to the wire last week, and during DiMacedo they picked up. But Keon Ingram led the backfield in touches, and then it was Damian Williams after that. So this week here, not a great matchup in Seattle. But Keon Ingram, I think he could go out there and make some plays. He did have 4 yards a carry in last week's game for the Cardinals at the Rams, and he did catch 2 footballs as well, where he had 7.5 fantasy points in PPR league. So right now he looks like the lead guy over there, and hopefully he could carve out a decent game, because a lot of people are desperate at running back, and they might have to start Ingram as their number 2 back. So hopefully he could be all right. Number 29, Deonta Foreman of the Chicago Bears. So Foreman last week, it was a mediocre type of ball game, but Foreman, we saw it even last season filling in for McCaffrey. Some games he exploded over 25 fantasy points, and then some games he didn't do much, where he had a pedestrian 5-7 fantasy points. So this week here versus the Raiders, backup quarterbacks for both teams. I think they're going to run the football a whole lot, and it's going to be a 50-50 split, I believe, with him and Roschon Johnson. So this week here, wouldn't be surprised to me if Foreman has a monster game or a game where you don't show up. But right now I'm going to limit expectations and have him at 29. Number 30, Justice Hill of the Baltimore Ravens. So this backfield over there in Baltimore, it's just been a carousel year after year with injuries, veterans coming in and playing. And right now, Justice Hill, he looks like the better option than Gus Edwards, because he could catch the football out of the backfield. But in terms of having major confidence in him this week, I really don't. But like I said, running backs depleted position this week. 6 teams on bye in the injuries, and Hill maybe could get lucky in this one and find the end zone versus a good line defense. 31, Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Najee Harris, like I said, he's losing his job week by week for this Steelers team. He can't catch the football out of the backfield, really. He's not looking explosive, and he's just running into crowds right now. So right now, Jalen Warren looks like the better running back. And I know people spent the 3rd or 4th round pick on Harris in most fantasy leagues, but this week here, I don't see him doing much. And I got him at 31, 32, Gus Edwards of the Baltimore Ravens. So Gus Edwards, just like Najee Harris, he don't have a lot of burst. He's more of a short yardage, goal line type of running back. Here's Gus Edwards. And this week here in a tough matchup versus Detroit, he's pretty much going to be a touchdown dependable back. He don't catch the football out of the backfield. Justice Hill is more the passing downs back anyway. And I got him at 32, 33, Craig Reynolds of the Detroit Lions. So we'll see if Craig Reynolds is going to get work in this game if Jahmyr Gibbs plays. We saw Reynolds last week come in, obviously, when Gibbs was out, and then Montgomery left the ball game with the rib injury. But anyway, Craig Reynolds, he had 10 carries last week for only 15 yards, which obviously is horrible yards per carry, and he did have a couple catches. But Craig Reynolds, he's more of a change of pace back. I think they should give Jahmyr Gibbs the ball a lot if he plays in this one, but you never know the way Dan Campbell's going to use this backfield. So I got Reynolds in a tougher matchup at Baltimore at 33, 34, Salvon Ahmed of the Miami Dolphins. So Salvon Ahmed's the backup back right now, even though I know Jeff Wilson possibly could return in this game, where he came off injured reserve last week but didn't play in the game. So Ahmed, he found the end zone last week. I know it was garbage time, but we know Mike McDaniel, he likes using 2 backs, and he likes guys with speed, and Ahmed definitely has speed. So this week here, in a potential shootout between Philly and Miami, it wouldn't be surprised to me if Ahmed once again sees the field for 7 to 10 touches. And I got him at 34, 35, Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commanders. So Gibson, he definitely lost most of his work in terms of carrying the football, but we still know he's a better receiver out of the backfield than a Brian Robinson. So this week, in a matchup in a New York Giant team that obviously he's very familiar with, I think Gibson, if you're very desperate and need a number 2 running back this week, could carve out maybe 8 to 10 fantasy points in PPR leagues at best, but I'm not counting on it, obviously. But like I said, this Giant defense he's familiar with, and they're not that good, so maybe he could be a sleeper this week. And the final running back I'm ranking at number 36 this week is Ezekiel Elliott of the New England Patriots. Elliott found the end zone for the first time last week for this Patriot team. And this season, to be honest, he looks quicker. He cut down and turned the fat into muscle as Elliott as well. And he's running the football hard, and he's still running over defensive players. So right now, this week, it's definitely a tough matchup versus the Buffalo Bills. But Ezekiel Elliott right now, there could be far worse options if you need a guy at the back end of your lineup this week in deeper leagues. So Ezekiel Elliott versus Buffalo, I have him at 36. That's the top 36 backs I'm ranking for Week 7 of the fantasy football season.